Hey guys, what's up? Stock Retail coming back to you. I know that it's been a minute, or it might even feel like a whole lot of minutes. I know it does to me. It has been a whirlwind few weeks for all of us. Boy, there's been a lot going on. There's a lot to talk about. Just excited to be back here with you. I know a few had been asking, like, "Hey, where's some new videos?" If I think I've said quite a few times, if you want to see more updates from me, I'm on Twitter because that's easier to fire off a 30-second tweet or something like that. So track me there. But here I am today. Let's talk about all that has been going on. So I'm actually going to talk a little bit about Bitcoin, AMC, GameStop, and a few other things. So let's just dive into it. Obviously, unless you've been living under a rock, not only did Kitty come back yet again, he came back in a really, really big way. So I'm going to talk about that a little, give you a point of view. That's all I can give you is a point of view, unless you're going to hear from him, which we're going to talk about that too. We may hear from him tomorrow. Pretty cool. So if you hadn't seen, and I'm just going to assume you all have, that's why I'm chuckling a little bit. The other day he posted his position, which we haven't seen that since 2021. So that was kind of a wild moment that sort of shook through the interwebs, didn't it? And what we should talk about today, that I'm sure many of you have already talked about, uh, is if you add up his shares and sort of the, I don't know, notional amount of all of his calls, in theory, he's exposed to possibly as many as 17 million shares of GameStop. And you can see the size of his portfolio. That is not a small amount. So that's pretty cool to see him effectively looking to me like he's, back to being kind of all in. Now, I'm an AMC ape, but I have always said, and since 2021, I've said this, you could find, a common thread on Twitter from me. I'm for retail. I want all of retail to win. So that's why when he comes back, I'm pretty jazzed, pretty excited, to be honest. And, he brings a level of energy that not many can. And so let's just talk through what does this mean? Because, boy, 120,000 calls, with one broker, you guys have seen by now, E-Trade came out and said some things. That is just not a small amount. But first, I want to kind of talk through motives. And so there's this idea of, I think for a few years, many of us have been yelling and shouting and teaching and advocating and just trying to get attention on all of the issues we see in the markets. Just think of every last bit of manipulation and fraud that you have learned about these sort of 3.5 years, or some have been here, say, 4 years. All that you've learned, and how many times have you wished that the system, in effect, would kind of be put on a public trial? And so that's already be telling you kind of one part of my point of view about what Kitty's up to. Some have suggested, hinted, or outright said he's some kind of agent or whatever. I'm just going to tell you straight up that is not my perception of what's going on. I understand, it's a large amount of money. It's um, unique timing in our history. And so I understand why some are wondering what's going on. But let me unpack a little bit of what I think is going on. So, like I said, I think many of us, myself included, have wished the system, in effect, would get put on trial. But now think through, too, how do you feel about the politicians, the courts, the lobbyists, the government, administrative, executive, judicial branches? Do you really feel like if we put the system on trial, there is true justice? And I think there could be questions on that. There are absolutely good people in our systems. And if you're one of those out there and you're listening to me, I just want to thank you. That is hard work to be in a system that has this much corruption and to be a good person and try to work for what's right. So I see you and I thank you. But I think it's still okay for me to speak in broad brushstrokes that there are problems in our system right now. And problems is an understatement. The system itself is, in many ways, is the problem. Many of us have come to believe that and see that. And so what have you been waiting for? You've been waiting for this system to get put on trial in a very public way. Well, what has been happening the last few days? All the questions about E-Trade, all the questions about these calls and are they covered or not, how many shares, what's going on, how will the system react, what's happening with the swaps. You've all heard me talk about wrapped assets and tokens and all of that stuff. I think you're watching a trial play out. It's just he himself is putting these guys on trial. So some of you will disagree with me, but that's what I think. And I had made this slide yesterday before today's big moves, and I was kind of saying on the right here. So There's this idea in, like, let's say criminal law, and let me be super, super clear. Again, I think Kitty is up to good things, and I think he's just exercising his right to free speech, and that ought to be protected. But I want to share a concept. There's this idea of when you have sort of means, motive, and opportunity. Do you have the ability to do something? Do you have a reason to want to do it? And do you have the opportunity to get it done? So that's often like what, say, a prosecutor would kind of, do in sort of a trial. Try to prove that there's means, motive, and opportunity. And the reason I bring that up, look at what I've kind of said here at the bottom. There was a point on Monday and Tuesday and really yesterday where, Kitty, well, if you go back to Monday morning, I believe there was a point he may have been up like $300 million on his calls and did not sell them, right? So then people start to say, what the heck? Why didn't he sell these? Why didn't he take the profit? And what I have a point of view on, and that you would see in my tweets this week, I don't think that's what he's here for. So now you get back into what's the motive? Why is he here? He had the opportunity to cash in big time. Let's call that a pump and dump. Tweet Sunday, it runs, sell Monday. That's a pump and dump. But he didn't do that. And that's a lot of money to leave sitting on the table. And so you have to ask yourself, do I really believe he's leaving that much money on the table? Now you could say, okay, today it ran a whole lot more. So that's why I say I made this slide yesterday before today's move. But I still think there is at least a scenario that I am holding space for, and I've challenged some of my friends to hold space for in their brains mentally, or in your heart. What, again, if he's just putting the system on trial and this isn't just about making money? Is he willing on some level to face down the system and risk losing some money, but to prove a point? I honestly think he might be, because I can tell you, I'm not in his position, so I can't, I guess, guarantee this, but I do believe that's the type of thing that I would do, because I'm so done with this system and all of its fraud and corruption and manipulation. Somebody somewhere has to have enough integrity to say, this is about more than money to me, and to stand up and do something about it. And how many times have you wished somebody would do that? And it kind of looks like that's playing out, right? So I'm not going to overhero him. Let's watch it play out. But I am saying I do believe in him, and I believe what he's doing is good. So, I'll just say it that way. So last point here on the slide, what if E-Trade and other brokers and market makers have been selling uncovered calls? And most of you are saying, well, duh. I mean, let's go back. E-Trade alone has put 120,000 calls in his account, per himself and per E-Trade. This screenshot and E-Trade coming out about that. Well, do you think they have 12 million shares that are covering those calls? I'm doubtful, right? And I'm sure you're doubtful too. Well, that is, selling naked calls. So let's talk a little bit about that. Just a nod to the Watchers movie that's coming out here soon. Obviously, I'm an AMC ape. Love it when we all go see movies. And frankly, I just love movies and love storytelling. Which, by the way, side note, I mean, most of us are both gamers and movie lovers. I've posted a couple times. I still have my original PlayStation. That was after I had graduated college. That dates me a little bit. And that was kind of like the first, I don't know, selfish purchase or fun purchase I made when I had a job. And so I've posted, like, I have Final Fantasy VII. I still have the discs. It's like on 2 discs. Still have those. And so there's a lot of us who love games, love movies, love the stories they tell, love the entertainment, and even love the meaning behind a lot of stories. Story really speaks to us. So sorry, that's kind of a tangent. But so let's talk naked calls. So there is an upside to selling naked calls. You can go kind of research this. You collect the premium, but that is a limited upside. And if you do any research, you're going to find out the downside is, first off, you sell at a loss, and there is unlimited downside, right? If that's the point of a squeeze. So effectively, if you have sold naked calls, you're basically short a stock in many ways, because as it runs, you don't have that stock, but you've sold those calls. And now if someone goes and exercises, when someone exercises an option, you've got to go get those, well, a call option. You've got to go get the shares to give to them. You've got to go locate shares, buy them, and hand them over. That could become a very expensive proposition. What did we close at? In fact, here, let me pull up my phone. I'm going to talk about after hours today, too. That was pretty exciting. As I look at my phone right now, they both popped again. In after hours, Good Lord. GameStop is almost $54 right now as I'm talking to you. 12 million shares at $54. You can do the quick math. We're almost like $650 million or something. And that's just for one person. That's not counting everybody else who's in. So could get real interesting real fast on GameStop. And you guys know I have a very strong point of view about AMC, and I don't have a problem sort of taking turns. If retail is winning, I'm in. Let's do this. So love it. Just you want to know, and that's why I'm saying, hey, is he putting the system on trial? When E-Trade is freaking out, ask yourself why. He hasn't done anything but exercise his free speech rights. I go on the air all the time and talk about how I love AMC, right? He's said he loves GameStop. I like the stock. There is no problem with that. I remember, by the way, side story too, in 2021, I mean, you know how the shills work. There were a lot of space calls getting hosted on Twitter, and some apes who were, big influencers would low key spread fear. And what they would do is in the space calls that, oh man, we got to be careful, we better be quiet and not say certain things. We could get in a lot of trouble. And I remember I hopped on one of those space calls because it was annoying me. And I got up there and I said, listen, Gary Gensler, Congress, you can go find this from 2021. You can see all of them going on record saying it is your First Amendment protected free speech right to say why you like a stock, basically to your neighbor or whatever, to tell people about a stock, to tell them why you like it. Now, we don't offer financial advice, right? And so Kitty's got to give disclaimers. I give disclaimers. I'm just a dude on the internet. You shouldn't listen to me. You should go do your research. But we do have the free speech right to say why we like a stock. And so he has done that. But so you see E-Trade and the whole system kind of freaking out. Well, just start asking yourself, why are they freaking out? And I think it leads you to some pretty easy conclusions. Speaking of kind of, I don't know, fraud, manipulation, a lot going on. And speaking of not having shares to deliver. So I would encourage you to research, first off, the historical volumes of GameStop and AMC and look at these spikes in volume lately and think about the CAT system, the Consolidated Audit Trail going live. Think about T+1 going live. I think I've mentioned that at least on Twitter. I can't remember if I've mentioned it in a video here. But really look at the volumes. AMC in particular has been bananas for a while, and GameStop's volumes have spiked significantly as well. AMC has just been at like all-time highs on volumes by a lot, not even just a little. Well, I don't think I would believe anyone who looked me straight in the face and said they've been delivering those shares at that level of volume, when we've probably traded the float. I'm going to make this up on the spot here, so it's a little dangerous, but I don't know. Since Kitty came back, the AMC float is probably traded somewhere between 12 and 15 times, maybe more. Probably lower. Let's say 10 to 12 times. Well, that's pretty crazy if you just look at how many days there's been. And you can't convince me that those shares have been getting delivered. And honestly, that shows up a little bit. The FTDs have been updated recently. You can just go to the SEC website and find those. There were some days missing, hint, hint, breadcrumb. I would pay attention to those. I'm not surprised they're missing, or at least they were recently, when last I checked. And so I'm just encouraging you to study FTDs a little bit and study how that is per the SEC's own past statements and congressional testimony, and per academic research, consistent FTDs is a big red flag about naked shorting. That's why I want you to learn about it. And you can see I'm putting up here 3 videos of mine. I went ahead and made them into a playlist. So if you just look for an FTD playlist from me, you're going to get information on FTDs, failure to deliver. If you're new here, that's what that is. It is when you buy a stock and it doesn't show up in your account in time. You're looking at a screen, by the way. When you log into your broker, you're just looking at a screen and someone can flash any number up there. They can say, yeah, sure, here's your shares and here's how much they're worth. But behind the screen is that share actually really sitting in your account. And when you poke at that and you dig at that, you start learning some of the warts and the problems and the cancers of our markets. And it's been a persistent problem and one that has not been solved in the 3.5 years that I've been here. And it's a big deal. And you'll get into all kinds of ways. FTDs can get buried in the options chain. That's another thing, which is also why I think Kitty's putting sort of the options market on trial here. Yeah, it's just been a long journey, and that brings back a few more memories, but I'm going to stop tangenting for you. So go check out these videos. You'll also see some things about wash sales, high frequency trading, just ways that stocks are manipulated, and a lot that we've been through worth knowing about with regards to those naked calls and naked shorting of shares. And so, what I think is happening too, and you can just see it, he is in a way staring down the system. And that's what I think many of us have been doing. I know I have, right? Like that's hodl culture. We're holding and we're making the system kind of come to a reckoning. The thing is, he's able to do it on a scale, both in terms of resources and in terms of visibility that just many of us can't accomplish right now. And so, good for him for speaking up. And you remember this is from his post. So he posted from the movie Stand By Me, and it's a game of chicken. And notice there's two cars too, and you could see how many posts he had that there were two cars, right? Like there was the one with Bourne and then the movie Drive. I kind of caught that one because that was fun. At the end, there's like the guy's wearing a Dodgers hat. I've had a few posts of me in a Dodgers hat, so that was just kind of a fun coincidence. But that had two cars. This has two cars. There's the whole thing of like, is it from the town? I think it's like who's driving, and then you see they're suddenly in Mad Max Fury Road. So there's a whole bunch he did of kind of driving in multiple vehicles and all of that. There's different interpretations of that, but I like to think it could be GameStop and AMC. Some of you will disagree with that. That's fine. I don't care if we agree. But either way, certainly he posted about a game of chicken, and here we are. Speaking about him, and then I think we're kind of moving on here in a minute. Uh, Live tomorrow, if you haven't seen. And again, I don't know how you wouldn't have seen that. So that's going to be crazy. I have a meeting about an hour after that kicks off. So hopefully I see what he's up to in time, or if not, then I don't know. Well, the internet's going to tell me what happens. So we'll see. Tomorrow, I think all of us, whether you love him, hate him, agree with me, disagree with me, whatever, it's certainly going to be interesting. And so I would recommend considering watching that. All right, let's move on to stuff that's not just about him. Moves today. So I had posted this when you can see where we were after hours. That was a little while ago. Looks like GameStop is higher than that now, and AMC is just a touch lower than that. But so we had a big day, and it's been a while since we've seen these kind of moves in after hours. So I think that's interesting. And again, I just want to point to keep in mind all that's swirling. So the options market, how many shares are starting to be in the money in both tickers, tracking, whether Kitty's going to exercise or not, whether AMC holders are going to exercise any options calls in the coming future. That was something I did a bit in 2021, and I used to post that. So you can probably go find receipts on that. Basically, again, when you exercise, you force them to go find shares and deliver those to you. And you know what? I'm sensitive to that. I don't say that out loud a lot because not everybody has the capital to do that. I understand that. You're basically buying lots of 100 shares when you exercise a call, but it can be very advantageous to you in your portfolio if you feel like a stock is still going to go up, and then you're effectively buying at a discount. So that's going to be interesting. Again, I've mentioned the FTDs. You can go find a whole playlist on tokens and how I feel about those, and sort of a reckoning that's coming on those. We talked about swaps. We talked about the CAT system, T+1. Like there's just so many things. And if you start digging, you're going to start seeing some dates coming up and some interesting things going on. And here we are, 3.5 years in since, whether you want to call it the squeeze or the sneeze of January 2021, and about 3 years on from AMC's secondary kind of bigger run in 2021. So there's just a lot going on with dates and movement and volumes and FTD. So you can hear how all of this seems to be kind of coming together. Let's flip a little bit here for a minute and talk about Bitcoin for just a minute. While all of this is happening, again, if you watch a playlist of mine called The Great Unwinding, you will learn a lot that I feel about goings on in crypto, goings on with the tokens. If you're new here, I'll just the 10-second version. The night before the buy button was removed in 2021, people like FTX, Binance, there's a group in Germany, CM Equity AG. You're going to learn about something called Uniswap. you've heard things about interactive brokers and Virtu and just, the liquidity fairies and just a whole lot of folks have effectively, so they created these tokens the night before the buy button. And those tokens were, many of us believe, effectively used to basically fight Bitcoin and in particular fight AMC, but also GameStop and actually a few other meme stocks as well too. So go check out that playlist sometime. Look up the Great Unwinding hashtag on Twitter if you want, or just that playlist here on YouTube, and you'll start to kind of uncover some things and go down your own rabbit hole on tokens and all of that. So the reason then that I focus pretty heavily on Bitcoin, I guess it's two parts. One is all that I just mentioned about tokens and what I believe is unwinding a lot of fraud, and us winning. Basically, it has to do with us winning. And so I track Bitcoin closely. I am invested in Bitcoin now. So then the second reason that I talk about it a lot is, as I've researched it probably for about a year now, maybe a little less than a year. So I'm late to the game on Bitcoin, but it doesn't matter. You come when you come to something like this, and we each have our own journey. Um, as I read through what was it, like 120 pages of emails between Satoshi and some call him Sirius, or I'm forgetting his other kind of username right now. The emails, the white paper, just all the different things. And I started thinking about all that's gone on with fiat currencies over the years. So you guys know by now, I won't belabor the point, but just for the new people who are here, for decades and even generations, fiat currencies have been what's called debased. And that's going to continue, in my opinion. And it's also funding a lot of problems, fraud, manipulation, wars. It's all getting funded by just printing money out of thin air. Well, you can't do that with Bitcoin. And so, in many ways, I see Bitcoin as a solve to a lot of the world's problems. And even if you don't believe that idealistic with me, basically, things like Bitcoin, gold, etc., are going to go up against fiat currencies because fiat is constantly debased. And you'll find in my playlist, you'll find a video about that, about debasement, and you'll see that this is generations long. And so, effectively, what I like to say is currencies are always going down. And so, actually, when you talk about inflation and you say something costs more, I would actually challenge us all to start reversing our language on that. Things aren't costing more, it's just that your money is worth less. And then you start asking, who's doing that to me? And then you start really understanding some things going on in the world, and starting to stand up for maybe something better. That's my point of view. But so Bitcoin's back to near all-time highs. I got trolled a lot for supporting it, which is funny because it was like, when it was 39K or something, and now it's basically 71K. So, some people just hate it, and let's give them time to come around. That's my point of view on that. The Australia and Thailand and Hong Kong kind of ETFs have been going live. So it's been just rolling its way through the world, basically. And then I would just encourage you to really look up the story of, I don't know if I'll pronounce it right, but Nayib Bukele, from El Salvador. So he's the president of El Salvador. And so the connection to Bitcoin is they've been consistently investing in Bitcoin, and to the point that they've in some ways nearly gotten their own financial freedom. And if you really study again the banks and the banking system and the global, I'll call it cabal, you're going to find some really rotten things, and how banks and the whole system kind of keep whole countries under their thumb and keep them oppressed. And so he, in a way, has been helping lead his country out of that and find their own financial freedom and sovereignty. And Bitcoin has been a major, major part of that story. So that's just really interesting. Some people kind of call him the first Bitcoin president. So it's been fun to watch. Whether you agree or disagree, you should research it and really find out some more. So speaking of which, so he did an interview with Tucker Carlson. Again, here I'll just say, if you've been around, I'm not a political channel. I keep it neutral here because I believe the ape movement is a unifying movement. And so I'm not commenting, pro or con at all about Tucker, but I'm just talking about Bukele. And I watched the interview today. It's about an hour and a half, and I would highly, highly recommend it. You'll hear things from him you might disagree with. Some posted back to me on Twitter and said, well, I didn't like this or I didn't like that. That's fine, but you can't deny that El Salvador has undergone a massive, massive, almost overnight transformation from being basically the most violent country on the earth, overrun by gangs, to now being one of the most peaceful countries on the earth and experiencing a time of financial freedom. That's a heck of a story. And at least to just understand the story, I think it's worth your time. And so some things I heard him say that were just, it's just interesting. You don't hear presidents talk like this. He literally was talking about seeking God's wisdom. And so here again, I'm going to be neutral. I think you can probably piece together over time from my tweets and some things, that I have some faith. I do, and that's okay. But it's also okay for me to treat all with respect and say, hey, come sit at my table and let's talk. So that's why I'm going to be somewhat neutral there on my channel as well. But just found it interesting that he was basically saying that's part of his leadership. You just don't hear people talk like that. Again, I would encourage you to listen because you actually hear some wisdom come out of him. So whether you believe in God or not, there's simple wisdom that comes out of this guy's mouth that's just like, man, that we have a lot of foolish leaders. I believe that, and that's part of the problem with our system, right? You follow fools and bad things happen. And people can have great intent, and some people don't have good intent and are also fools. That's even worse. But I don't want to get political here. So he talked about this. I thought this is interesting. Sometimes the system will condemn you for doing the right thing. As he was kind of stopping this, murder and all these things going on, and they were changing out like the attorney general, and actually it was Congress doing that, not him, their Congress. The sort of voices of the world were speaking in really strong condemnation and talking about, well, you know what, I'll let you hear the interview. And again, you don't have to agree with him, but just interesting that perhaps sometimes to do the right thing, you've got to stand up and risk people condemning you. And I found that interesting. As I was listening to him, I really thought about how oppressive forces of the world really like to keep people under their thumb. And I think that's what we've been fighting in our stocks. We're trying to fight what we believe is an unfair, unjust system. And look at how hard that's been, and look at how long it's taken. And so I often say I like to shine a light, and I encourage you guys to do that too, because that's the only way we beat all of this darkness, is to shine lights in our communities, in our circles. Sometimes you can get overwhelmed and think, wow, how do I change the world? Well, I tell you what, just look at a few people around you, and I promise you can change their world. Sometime I'll tell more of my story. I've told bits and pieces of it, but some of you know that is my story. People saw me and helped me and changed my world, and that wasn't like they had to go help millions of people. People just did small things for me, and it was a big deal. So I'll just encourage you to kind of think about that. He talks a lot about having to maintain, like when we get good things, whether it's freedom, democracy, just systems, you can't just sit on that. It takes work, it takes focus, it takes maintenance. And so he was making me think, yeah, you know what? That is the journey we've been on in the retail movement, in the ape movement. And whenever or however we do win, just keep in mind that's not an end. That's not an ending. That's a beginning, I believe. I've come to that point of view too, that we have work to do to make some things better in our world. And I've said before too, either we work today or our children have to work tomorrow, and I'd rather do it and not pass it off to them. So I hope you'll join me in that work as well. Okay, that's enough about that. You can watch the video for yourself, and I don't mean to go overboard there. I'm still learning about him myself. Question, switching topics completely. And I'm going to go actually backwards on this slide. So you can see the slide says, does everyone have a price? I was leaving a movie recently. My family, we had gone, oh man, what movie If. We went and saw the If movie. Fun movie, kind of touching and fun, and parts of it are silly, and parts of it are heartwarming. So go check that out if you haven't seen that movie yet. And as we were leaving, my youngest, so I have 3 kids. My youngest said, and by the way, he just has this like total heart of gold. He's a wonderful kid. He's going to do great things. And so he was asking something philosophically that I know he would actually, frankly, never do. But he was like, I had kind of said, well, we're not supposed to fill up the pop, the soda cup on the way out of the theater. We're not free refills for us. And he kind of just philosophically asked, like he had already thrown it away. And he just said, well, why not? It's not that big a deal, right? Like it's just one pop. And I've always had this point of view, and I've been presented with this a few times in my life. And so I kind of talked to him and I said, well, how much is that pop? And guys, I don't even remember myself. Like, what's a pop at the movie theaters? I usually toss it on my AMC rewards and all that. And so sometimes I guess I'm not doing a good job paying attention to that. Also because I just like treating the kids when we go, because it's just a fun treat, right? So, but anyway, let's say that's $3 or something. Or, $3, $4, even five if you want to say that much. And so I said, all right, let's even say, because I just wanted to use a round number with him, and I said, let's even say that was like $10 or something. And what you're really saying is your integrity is not even worth one cup of pop or that $5 or $10. That's why it's a big, because he said, well, it's not a big deal. It's one pop. And I said, well, actually, you're selling out your integrity for the price of one cup of pop. And if your integrity isn't even worth that, how much more if you were faced with $1 million decision or $1 billion decision? And I think that in a nutshell can describe a lot of what you're seeing in some of our systems. I think it's people who didn't handle integrity in the small things because they thought it was small. But I would just say, like, flip it, reverse it. The small things actually show the level of your integrity and actually become big. And so for me, I even thought about this, and I think I will say it out loud. Like, first off, there have been hints from people before on Twitter, like that I could effectively join some teams, and you'll find there's one post where I even just flat out said, I don't want to come sit at your table. I want to dismantle your table. And so I think I made it pretty clear to what I might call the abyss that no, I'm not going to be on your team. But I'll be honest too, if anyone was ever to come to me and make any kind of offer to sort of shill, I'm going to put that on blast. And I'm going to tell all of you guys about it and show you publicly. Here's who they were. Here's what they offered. Here's how that went. And make sure that you all know who cannot be trusted. So I would like to take the path of being untouchable. And, I heard someone recently on a space call saying, well, everyone's got a price. I've got a price, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, no, man, I'm not selling my soul for a cup of pop, so to speak. My integrity is invaluable, and I hope yours is too. And so I just want to invite you all on that path as well. If we're going to change the world, we can't be selling out for a cup of pop. So enough about that, enough preaching. Let's talk business updates. A few people have asked me on Twitter, and I think I've seen some questions here on YouTube also. People have said, well, hey, the box office for Q2, maybe it's not tracking. How are we doing on cash burn and all of that? So let me just give a quick update. I've got reams of spreadsheets behind this, but I'm just going to give you the bullet point. And then sometime I'll do a new, just I don't know what's the word, meaty business update and talk numbers. We'll do that again soon. Maybe when Q2 is over, so I can give you my Q2 forecast on how we landed, and then revise my Q3 forecast on where we're going. All right, so Q2, first of all, it actually is tracking. A lot of people are worried because we started slow. Q2 was a little bit more back-loaded. If you think back to April was pretty slow, still strike impacted. May was a little bit strike impacted, but got better. We saw better results. And yes, there's a couple films that, didn't meet expectations, even for me. But there's others that are surprises that either I wasn't tracking on or that did a little better than expected. And then now, for the rest of June, you would find some tweets I've put out where it's, if you go look and just Google like 2024 movie releases, and if you were to look at that, you're going to see that June, really literally as of today, because I think like Bad Boys and The Watchers is coming out. And then you kind of go through the rest of June. We've got some great releases coming out. Going to start getting a lot stronger. And that's what I've always said. Like literally since I think last October, you would find forecasts from me where I said, hey, we just got to get to June. And then we're going to start being a lot better. Kind of May, June, July. And here we are. And that's what's happening. And if you look at the summer releases, it continues to get a lot better. So that's kind of the first two bullets. And you've heard Adam kind of talk that way too. Back half of the year, he said, right? Well, the back half of the year starts basically now. You could call that July if you like. So Q2 is going to look a lot like Q1. I guess one more note on the first bullet. Remember also, besides how the box office is tracking, it's probably we're probably going to land between 95 and 97% of my forecast for the quarter at the box office. So that's what I mean. It's like close. Underperform maybe a little, but nothing big enough that really changes anything radically. And Adam had said Q2 would look like Q1 in terms of AMC's bottom line. And I agreed with him at the time, and I still agree. I have not changed my forecast significantly. I mean, I keep it updated sort of day to day with the box office, but that's not a lot of erosion that we need to talk about. And then on top of that, before the quarter, I didn't know anything about Billie Eilish coming. So keep in mind that besides just how the box office looks, we had the Billie Eilish sort of listening event that added some extra revenue back in. And then think through to, what do you think about popcorn growth and some of that type of stuff. So, and don't sleep on. I've seen AMC pushing Stubbs membership, and I've seen a lot of apes, telling their friends about Stubbs membership. So that's steady revenue too. That's subscription revenue, regardless of how movies do. So, just basically, I'm saying we're fine, and we're going to hit roughly the numbers I thought we would, and it's going to look a little bit like Q1. But remember, Adam already brought in the cash for that. So when people are asking me about cash burn, I'm just saying, and now you're just hearing from my voice, like I'm just not concerned. He planned for that. He filled the war chest. We've talked about that. His post about the squirrel, or I had called it, a squirrel gathering nuts. I kind of like that. So, all right. So Q3 though. Now I believe, and I'll have to refresh the forecast when we get a little closer. When Q2 is over, I'll refresh it. But still seeing the movie releases coming out that tell me I believe Q3 is likely to be our best ever quarter. So think back to last year when we had two profitable quarters in a row. That was Q2 and Q3 of last year. I think this Q3 is going to be not just better, but a lot better than anything you've seen yet. Let's also see if we get any concerts yet or not. I'm not sure. Adam has said there may be some in the back half of the year. He's been a little squirrely. Maybe I'll say that, but I wouldn't actually say squirrely. I think he's probably keeping it tight, and we'll get announcements when the time is right. So there's a chance maybe there's some upside there, but either way, Q3 looking awesome. Q4 then. Another great quarter. Now, I want to remind you there's some non-cash events that hit Q4. That's kind of an every year thing until we're done with this goodwill impairment in particular. But that's non-cash. So if you kind of correct for that, if you take that out, it makes earnings look worse, but that's just saving you on taxes. As far as the cash flow, I think we're going to be pretty happy. And then 2025, I think we're going to be at full year profits. And then 2026, it's kind of, you can see I'm saying like full year profits plus plus. We are to the part where it's going to be a lot of fun for a long, long time. I mean, I'm basically telling you at least like the next 10 quarters pretty much should look like some of the best you've ever seen. And then you're going to get it like a new best you've ever seen quite a few times. It's going to be impossible for Wall Street to ignore at some point. And you're going to see how undervalued we are. So love that. We just had the annual meeting. All caps here at the top. Guys, vote. First off, the silver lining or the really kind of neat update was it's really clear retail still owns AMC. You can see that in metrics that I'm seeing out there of kind of 90%. I think Adam talked about kind of 85 to 90%. Retail owns the float, especially if you account for index funds. So index funds, just auto investing, they have to own. And Adam was kind of saying in his point of view, that's not really institutional ownership. Those are just sort of like spider funds and auto funds and stuff like that. If you take index funds out, retail just really owns AMC. It's our company and we love it, right? And I'm not going anywhere and you're not going anywhere. So I love that. But what happened is some of the items did not pass because there was not enough of a vote. Now I've gotten asked on that too, so let me explain that. Probably should have put a bullet in here, but I'll just explain it to you. So there are, in the annual meeting, or when we have any proxy vote, there will be routine items and there will be non-routine items. So the routine items was like, let's re-elect the board members or whatever. I hope I got that right. But routine is just like, these are normal votes. You would see this in the normal course of business. Most businesses have them. You might even see it year in, year out. It's routine. Non-routine, so remember we voted on some other things around changing the years of service for each board cycle. We voted on some protections for the board legally. I think that has to do with some things going on in Delaware personally. And I will say I voted yes down the line. I did not get real vocal about that because I don't like telling people how to vote. And frankly, I shouldn't. You should decide how you want to vote for yourself. Um, but I did vote yes down the line. But the issue was there just weren't anywhere near enough votes because for some of those items, you have to have a simple majority to say that it passed. And it was like 18 or 19%. I think it was exactly like 18.5% of votes had been cast. And so what that really tells me, now we know we have some brokers, in particular for some of our European apes, um, some brokers who are not making it easy to vote. That's been a challenge. We know that. So to you, if your broker hasn't been giving you information, I would just continue to be loud with the system. Like this is not right. You should not have your ability to vote on shares you own taken away from you. Right. So I would advocate for that. And then for some of us, I am sure that there are people who either didn't pay attention to their emails. Like I got my voting material in email from my broker. So maybe some didn't pay attention. Maybe it went into spam folders. Others just, let's be real, maybe got lazy and just didn't get to it. And I'm sure some didn't know how they wanted to vote. And I can understand that. So I'm just saying in the future, I think for ourselves and for our company, it's going to be really important that we engage the process. We can't fight the system and then not engage the process. It's just not going to work. So I would just really, really, really strongly encourage you vote, get your friends to vote, get other apes to vote, 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 vote in the future. We'll have more opportunities. So you don't hear me like overly concerned about it, but it's an opportunity for us to grow and be stronger. And what I would say, I don't remember if it was recorded and posted, but if it is, go listen to the annual meeting. Or what you can do is you can check. I had a tweet that day, so I guess that's yesterday as of the time of this recording, Wednesday the 5th. My tweet was at 11:50. It's too long to post here, so that's why I didn't give you a screenshot. Adam had a moment where he spoke from the heart, and there was actually an ape right before that, one I didn't really know, who I thought represented himself well, and kind of said basically, hey, I'm here for some deeper reasons and I'm here for as long as it takes. And was kind of thanking Adam and thanking all of us apes for being in this with him. And I thought that was pretty cool. And then Adam responded and spoke from the heart. And I would just really encourage you, go listen or go check out my tweet on that, because I sort of live typed it out. I was like a stenographer or something, typed that out, and so you can see what he said. But always better to hear it directly from his voice if you can. Okay, I just want to take a moment and then we'll get back to kind of a wrap up. I'm not going to explain these pictures. They're just special to me for different reasons. 3 of them I've been playing around with, like AI generated images. So pardon me that they're not the greatest. I'm a newbie to that, but they still say some things that I was thinking. And I just want to give a special thanks because I perceive it's like there's some archetypes out there. There is the warrior, there is the sort of king or leader or boss, there is the teacher, there's kind of the angel, there's sort of the, I don't know if you want to call it a priest or spiritual guide or whatever. There's all types out there fighting in this fight. And some are doing thankless jobs. And by thankless, I just mean we don't all see everything that they're doing all the time. So how can they be thanked? And there are some who kind of feel like they walk roads alone, which is the song in the middle here. You do not walk alone. And so I just want to say to some folks who have been instrumental in this journey, and some of them who have done things we didn't get to see, that we do actually, in our hearts at least, we see you and we are thankful for you. And me in particular, because there are things I've gotten to witness from time to time, just from being so deep in this journey. I really have a high level of admiration, respect, honor. In some cases, maybe you could even call it like I don't know, a brotherly love or something for more than one person out there, like a few folks. And just really, really, really value how some people have frankly put themselves on the line. They have put their skin in the game. They have put themselves out there and challenged the system, and the system does not like that. And that comes at personal cost. That comes at the cost of time energy, emotion, spirit, you name it. It's not easy. And I mean, there's days that I've been exhausted. I can only imagine for some of these people how exhausting it is. But I just want to say it has been worth it, in my opinion, because I think big things are happening in the world, and I think you've been a part of it. So I just wanted to say thank you, and I see you. Okay, wrapping up. So, kind of the TLDR, in my opinion, about all sort of our big three, let's call it. With Bitcoin, it's kind of making kings and banks bow down. And I think it's giving back to the people. I know that some of you disagree with me. Some disagree really, really strongly, and you're in my DMs, and I know that. But this is my point of view, that Bitcoin is out there changing the world. And I mean, you see, all three US presidential candidates effectively gave the nod to Bitcoin. You see what's happening in El Salvador. You see what happened with BlackRock and the ETFs, and my point of view on the great unwinding. So I think there's good things going on there. And with Bitcoin currently at near all-time highs, it's only a couple percentage points off. Perhaps, and I can't promise this, who can, but perhaps there's a run coming pretty soon. Put it this way, I've got my own kids putting some money in Bitcoin because they're young enough. They can just wait and wait and wait. And when they're older, I think they're going to be pretty happy. So that is my sort of thesis in a nutshell. GameStop, I mean, you saw how much cash RC generated with the sale. You see Kitty standing down the system in this big game of chicken. And so, if your thesis is that there, because of all this cash, there are investment opportunities, there's transformation opportunities, and Kitty is the one I'm calling a lion bigger than a whale. Um, there's a lot going on there and a lot to like. And so, sure, it defies, let's say, historical ways of valuing a stock, but that is what we are all doing, isn't it? We're defying old ways of thinking in all three of these investment vehicles, in my opinion. AMC, we've got a captain at the helm, one that I trust very deeply, and I really don't care who yells at me for that. I trust him. I do. We've got profits coming. I've told you about that. And our community is fierce. And frankly, we have leveled ourselves up beyond manipulation. And, I'd say good luck to the manipulators. It's not going to work. And as always, I believe we will win. So let's go.